You don't have to be a believer to appreciate what we're about to explore. The Bible remains the most examined, debated, and scrutinized text in all of human history. And yet, decade after decade, science keeps catching up to what it already said. Archaeological digs, geological surveys, and cutting-edge research continue to pull back the curtain on stories that were once dismissed as legend. What if I told you that 10 of the Bible's most extraordinary claims now have hard scientific and historical backing? That's exactly what we're covering today. Stay with us, because some of these will genuinely stop you in your tracks. The Star of Bethlehem. The Gospel of Matthew describes a remarkable celestial phenomenon, a star so distinctive that it guided the Magi from the east all the way to the birthplace of Jesus. For centuries, critics labeled this a poetic invention, a literary device meant to signal the importance of Christ's birth rather than an actual astronomical event. That skepticism has been seriously challenged. Astronomer Colin Humphreys of Cambridge University conducted an exhaustive analysis of ancient astronomical records, including Chinese imperial star catalogs dating to 5 BC. His research identified a slow-moving comet recorded by Chinese observers that would have appeared to stand over a specific geographic location when viewed from the latitude of Jerusalem. Separately, astronomer Michael Molnar proposed that a rare double occultation of Jupiter by the Moon in the constellation of Aries on April 17th, 6 BC, an event of enormous astrological significance in Babylonian and Roman astronomy, would have been interpreted by learned Magi as signaling the birth of a great king in Judea. Both theories converge on the same window of time and the same region of the sky. The Star of Bethlehem was not necessarily a myth invented for narrative effect. It may well have been a real, observable, and historically recorded phenomenon, one that modern astronomy can trace back across 2,000 years of sky. The destruction of Sodom, Genesis 19, describes the total obliteration of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Fire, brimstone, and complete devastation raining down from the sky in a matter of moments. For most of modern history, this was considered one of the Bible's most dramatic exaggerations. In 2021, a team of archaeologists and scientists published findings in the journal Scientific Reports describing their excavations at a Bronze Age site called Tal el-Hammam in the Jordan Valley. What they uncovered was extraordinary. The remains of a city that had been subjected to an extreme, instantaneous, high-temperature event. One so intense that it melted pottery, turned mud brick into glass, and left a layer of destruction across the entire site. The temperatures involved, estimated to have exceeded 2,000 degrees Celsius at the surface, are inconsistent with any conventional fire. The researchers concluded that the most plausible cause was an airburst from a meteor or comet fragment exploding in the atmosphere above the city. Similar to the Tunguska event in Siberia in 1908, only far more localized and catastrophic. The date of this destruction? Approximately 1650 BC, placing it squarely within the time frame of the biblical account. The cities of the plain, long thought to be theological metaphor, may have been real cities destroyed by a real cosmic event that left physical evidence still readable in the soil today. The walls of Babylon. The book of Daniel and the prophet Jeremiah both describe Babylon as a city of staggering scale and fortification. Walls so wide that chariots could race along their tops, a city so mighty that its fall seemed unthinkable. Greek historian Herodotus made similar claims, but for centuries many scholars believed these descriptions were literary exaggerations meant to magnify Babylon's eventual downfall. Then came the excavations. German archaeologist Robert Koldewey spent nearly 2 decades, from 1899 to 1917, systematically excavating the ancient city of Babylon in present-day Iraq. What he uncovered confirmed the extraordinary claims almost point for point. The outer defensive walls were double-layered with a moat, and the inner walls were thick enough to accommodate multiple lanes of chariot traffic on their tops. The Ishtar Gate, one of the entry points into the city, was covered in glazed blue tiles and decorated with dragons and bulls, a level of architectural sophistication that stunned the archaeological world. The palace complex, the processional street, and the structural foundations of a massive tiered tower, likely the historical basis for the Tower of Babel account as well, were all confirmed through physical excavation. Babylon was not a myth inflated by ancient storytellers. It was exactly the kind of colossal, awe-inspiring city the Bible described, the census of Quirinius. One of the most debated passages in the New Testament has always been Luke's reference to a Roman census under Quirinius as the reason Joseph and Mary traveled to Bethlehem. Critics long argued that no such census occurred at the right time, and that this represented a clear historical error in the Gospel account. Archaeological and papyrological discoveries have steadily complicated that dismissal. Ancient papyri, recovered from Egypt, including a document discovered in 1905 and dated to approximately 104 AD, reveal that Roman census procedures regularly required people to return to their ancestral towns for registration. More significantly, an inscription discovered in Antioch references Quirinius holding a military governorship in Syria during a period earlier than the census traditionally associated with his name, suggesting he may have held authority in the region across two separate appointments. While scholarly debate continues, the once confident claim that Luke simply fabricated or confused the census has been significantly undermined by physical evidence showing that the administrative practices Luke describes were entirely consistent with actual Roman census procedure in the region. The Pool of Bethesda. The Gospel of John, chapter 5, describes Jesus healing a paralyzed man at a pool called Bethesda, which John says had 5 porticos, 5 colonnaded walkways surrounding its waters. For centuries, no such pool had been found, and the 5 portico detail was singled out as proof that John was writing theology rather than history, since no known pool design matched that description. Excavations in the northeastern quarter of Jerusalem's Old City, near the Church of St. Anne, eventually uncovered a large pool complex with a striking architectural feature. 4 colonnaded sides, plus a central dividing colonnade, creating exactly 5 covered walkways. The site dates to the Second Temple period and matches John's geographical description precisely, placing it in the area then known as the Sheepgate District. The doubly accurate detail, both the number of porticos and the location, strongly suggests that John was writing from specific, reliable geographical knowledge of Jerusalem, rather than composing symbolic fiction. The existence of the Hittites. For much of the 19th century, one of the most commonly cited examples of biblical error was the repeated mention of the Hittites, a powerful civilization described throughout the Old Testament as a major regional force interacting with Israel, Egypt, and other nations. The problem was that outside the Bible, no evidence of the Hittites existed whatsoever. Critics use this as a prime example of biblical mythology dressed up as history. Then, beginning in the 1870s, and accelerating dramatically with excavations at Hadassa in modern-day Turkey in the early 20th century, archaeologists uncovered the remains of one of the ancient world's great empires. The Hittite Empire, with its sophisticated legal codes, diplomatic treaties, and military power, had simply been waiting in the ground. Thousands of cuneiform tablets confirmed their language, their kings, and their geopolitical reach across exactly the regions the Bible described. One treaty discovered at Hattusa even references Egypt, precisely the nation the Bible places in diplomatic tension with the Hittites during the time of their shared regional dominance. An entire civilization that critics said never existed turned out to be one of the most powerful empires of the ancient world. The Tunnel of Hezekiah, 2 Kings, chapter 20, and the Book of Chronicles both describe a remarkable engineering achievement commissioned by King Hezekiah of Jerusalem around 700 BC. Facing an imminent Assyrian invasion, Hezekiah ordered the construction of a tunnel to redirect the waters of the Gihon Spring inside the city walls, securing Jerusalem's water supply against a siege. The tunnel, known today as Hezekiah's Tunnel, or the Siloam Tunnel, still exists beneath Jerusalem and stretches approximately 1,750 feet through solid bedrock. In 1880, a young boy wading through the tunnel discovered an ancient Hebrew inscription carved into the rock near its southern end, now known as the Siloam inscription, describing the moment the two teams of workers, digging from opposite ends, broke through and met in the middle. The inscription is currently housed in the Istanbul Archaeological Museum. Carbon dating of plant matter embedded in the tunnel's plaster lining has confirmed construction during the 8th century BC, exactly consistent with Hezekiah's reign. This is not simply a tunnel that matches a biblical description. It is a tunnel accompanied by an ancient first-hand account of its own construction. One of the most tangible connections between a biblical text and physical archaeology in existence. The bones of a crucified man. The New Testament accounts of crucifixion describe a form of execution so brutal and specific that it left a distinctive physical signature on the body. For many years, some scholars debated the precise mechanics of Roman crucifixion, partly because no skeletal remains of a crucified individual had ever been confirmed. That changed in 1968 when construction workers in the Givat HaMiftar neighborhood of Jerusalem uncovered a burial cave containing an ossuary, a bone box, bearing the name Yehohanan. Inside were the heel bones of a man, and through one of them an iron nail, approximately 4.5 inches long, had been driven sideways. The nail had bent on impact, likely against a knot in the wood of the cross, making it impossible to remove. He had been nailed through the heel bone to the side of a wooden upright. Analysis also suggested trauma consistent with the arms being affixed to a crossbeam. This single discovery, the only confirmed physical remains of a crucified individual from the Roman period, validated the New Testament's description of crucifixion as a literal, physically documented form of execution used in first-century Judea, not a theological symbol invented after the fact. The darkness at the crucifixion. 3 of the 4 Gospels describe an extraordinary event during the crucifixion of Jesus, a darkness that fell over the land for 3 hours in the middle of the day. Critics have long argued that such an event, if real, would have been recorded by non-Christian historians. In fact, it was. The Roman historian Thallus, writing around 52 AD, within living memory of the crucifixion, references a darkness and earthquake occurring in Judea. His original works are lost, but he is quoted by Julius Africanus in the 3rd century, who notes that Thallus tried to explain the darkness as a solar eclipse. Africanus himself argues against the eclipse explanation, correctly noting that Passover occurs during a full moon when a solar eclipse is astronomically impossible. What makes this remarkable is not just the reference to the darkness, but Thallus's attempt to explain it naturally, which means he accepted it as a real event that required explanation. A pagan Roman historian, writing within decades of the crucifixion, treated the midday darkness not as Christian legend, but as a historical event he felt compelled to account for. The empty tomb. No detail in the entire New Testament has been examined more ferociously than the claim of the empty tomb. And yet the one fact that even the earliest opponents of Christianity never disputed was that the tomb was, in fact, empty. The Jewish religious leaders in Jerusalem, according to Matthew 28, did not claim the tomb was still sealed. They claimed the disciples had stolen the body. This is a crucial historical detail, because you do not invent a cover story for a tomb that still contains a body. The earliest counter-narrative to the resurrection was not Jesus never rose, but rather, someone took him. Roman historian Josephus, writing in the late 1st century, references Jesus in a passage that, even after accounting for later Christian additions, contains what most scholars accept as an authentic core, describing a man named Jesus who was executed and whose followers continued to claim he appeared to them afterward. The empty tomb is not simply a theological assertion made by believers. It is a fact acknowledged implicitly even by those most motivated to deny it. And in that emptiness, in what was not there, lies the claim that changed the world. He is not here. He is risen. Just as he said, the Bible is not a relic sealed away from scrutiny. It is a text that has been questioned, tested, and excavated for centuries. And it keeps standing. From the star that guided the Magi to the nail in a crucified man's heel, from the melted ruins of a Bronze Age city to the tunnel still flowing beneath Jerusalem, the evidence accumulates. Not every question is answered, not every mystery is solved, but what we find again and again is that when the ground is examined, when the tablets are translated, when the science is run, the Bible is there already. If this video opens something in you, hit like, subscribe, and pass it on to someone who's searching. Because faith doesn't require you to abandon your questions. It asks you to follow them all the way to the end. See you in the next one. May God bless your journey. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. Matthew 7:7-9.